So damaged knuckles, and we already knew that Bryan had issues at the college, but we had no idea just how many issues he really had. A professor completely said that this was going to happen with Bryan, and now allegedly he said Kaylee's name. Oh my gosh, this is just so much. Before we get into today's video, I just want to let you guys know that this video is for educational purposes only. Please remember to be kind to everybody everywhere in your everyday life, in your home, in the grocery store, and especially in the comment section down below. Please do not show hate to anybody, anywhere. So good morning, good morning, good morning. How is everybody doing today? I hope you all are having an amazing day. I hope you all had a wonderful week. Hope everybody is feeling good. I don't know about where y'all are, but in this part of Florida and down here in the South, we're supposed to be getting a false fall where it's just going to like miraculously, I guess because of that big storm that was out there on the East Coast, they're saying it changed the weather patterns and we're going to get a false fall and it's going to get like really cold here in a week. Is it going to snow again in Florida? I don't know. Anyway, so in today's video, we're going to be talking about some more of the documents that came out about Bryan. And just like I promised in my last video, these WSU complaints that we're going to talk about today, I wasn't ready for. Let's just say that. And we knew before, like a few years ago, that Bryan allegedly had a bunch of complaints made on him at WSU, but since the Idaho State Police dropped all these new documents, I don't think anybody has been ready to see just how many complaints. Girls crying, teachers writing him up. I mean, it has been a lot. Before we go any further, I did want to stop and thank today's sponsor, Midas Merge. Midas Merge is a mobile puzzle game that is set in the fantasy realm of the Gardens of Gold. And I have to tell you that the creatures in this game are the cutest little things that you could ever imagine. In the game Midas Merge, the land has actually been like plunged into darkness after King Midas's magical crown shatters. The mission in the game is to restore the light and beauty by like merging items and creatures and evolving them and repairing both the crown and the gardens. So whether you're like a casual game player like myself who just likes to play something every now and then when I want to like disconnect from the crazies of life, or if you're more like a puzzle master like my son, Midas Merge is the perfect blend of strategy, storytelling, and stunning visuals where you get to solve golden puzzles, rebuild the epic kingdom, and unlock ancient secrets. And my favorite, you get to raise and create these adorable mythic little creatures. And the best part about Midas Merge is that it is completely free to download and perfect for like offline play, which allows you to dive into the enchanting world of these cute little creatures anytime, anywhere, no Wi-Fi needed. And you can enjoy an ad-free experience with no dead ends, ensuring you're always merging and exploring without interruptions. If you want to play Midas Merge, be among the first 100 to install the game via my link down in the description box, or just use my QR code right here and receive a unique Mark Fox level 1. Now this ultra cute creature will boost your garden progress and will be personalized with my name. So don't miss out and download now. Again, all you gotta do is just click the link down in the description box or just scan this QR code right here and start playing today. Thanks again, Midas Merge. Okay, so before we get into the WSU complaints, let's talk about some of the other interesting parts that I read in these documents, like how some reports are saying that Bryan said Kaylee's name during the incident. In this new set of documents that were released, there is a statement that was given by Dylan that we have not seen before. This interview is partially redacted, but it appears that it was conducted on November 17th of 2022, and it seems like it was done at Dylan's family's home, which was in Boise, Idaho. Now, there is a 1-hour time difference between Boise and Moscow, so you'll see in some of Dylan's statements that she seems to get like the time confused because of that. In the interview, Dylan does confirm that she had been drinking that night, but she said that she hadn't used any substances. And we did talk about that in one of my previous videos as well. Then Dylan goes on to say that around 4 to 4:20 a.m., she thought she heard Kaylee singing and like playing music. Then she heard who she thought was Kaylee walking up the stairs. And then she said that she heard Kaylee say, "Someone's here," and she sounded frantic. She thought that it was Kaylee walking up the stairs with Murphy. And y'all know that Murphy is Kaylee's dog. But then she said that she heard who she thought was Kaylee run back downstairs and that Murphy was barking at this time. But then Dylan went on to say she wasn't exactly sure if this was really what she heard. She said that all of the girls wore Doc Martens, and that's what it sounded like the person who came down the stairs was wearing. So in my opinion, she's hearing like boom, 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 boom coming down the stairs. And then it seems like Bethany texts Dylan about hearing something that sounded like fireworks. So there's been a lot of debate or questions about fireworks. A lot of people are like, was it a up? Was it this? A friend of mine had a good theory that it was a lamp. You know, like when a lamp gets knocked over and that bulb explodes, it makes a loud popping noise, that's what it could have been. But nevertheless, Dylan said that the second time she opened her bedroom door to see what was going on, this is when she heard what she thought was Kaylee crying on the second floor in the bathroom. She said that that's when she heard a male voice. She said that she'd never heard this male voice before, and it said, "It's okay, I'm going to help you." And again, Dylan said that at first she thought that she heard Kaylee crying on the second floor in the bathroom with the male who said that. But in this statement, Dylan clarifies that knowing what she knew at that point, it could not have been Kaylee, and she believed that it was probably Xana. So again, they interviewed Dylan and Bethany right after the incident happened, right when the police got there. I want to play a part of that 911 phone call for you guys, just to remember the tone of what happened at the moment that they found out that their friends were gone or something terrible had actually happened.
911 location of your emergency.
Hi, something is happening. Something happened in our house. We don't know what.
What is the address of the emergency?
1122.
And this interview that we just talked about was like a week later, or almost a week later. By this time, all of the things, this is what I'm imagining Dylan has gone through, okay? She had just turned 19 years old. She was the new person in this house with all these roommates that had been there together before. She's basically fresh out of high school. She had been drinking all night long, and we're going to talk more about that here in a second. And during the night, she's trying to reconcile with the things that she's hearing. But after she realizes what happens, and she goes and stays with her parents, then all of those sounds that she probably excused away as a firecracker, as this, as that, she's starting to put more pieces together. Now, I found this interesting because then Dylan goes on to say that she never even thought about an intruder in her mind. She stated that she was not processing what was occurring as threatening. She was thinking a million other things. Dylan talks about seeing Bryan as he was making his way out of the house, and she again says that he was holding something that she initially thought was a vacuum, but she knew that it didn't make any sense, so she thought maybe that the person was a firefighter because of what Bethany had texted her about hearing a firework. So maybe she's thinking like, okay, I heard this loud sound, it's a pop, I saw this guy, he was a firefighter checking throughout the house, I'm underage, I've been drinking, I'm hiding in the room. They'll just come in and check the house and leave and everything is fine. Everybody's passed out. Dylan then went on to say that she left her bedroom. Again, we all knew this. She ran to Bethany's room and she said that she actually saw Xana lying on the floor of her bedroom in her underwear. Now, Dylan said that she thought Xana must have been passed out and that it actually was not unusual for Xana to be in her underwear. And then Dylan went on to say that, again, she didn't perceive this guy, Bryan, as necessarily a threat because there were people that were always coming in and out of the house all the time. And again, mind y'all, this is on November 17th. This is not her making up these reasonings after the internet has painted her as a bad guy. At this point, nobody even knew all these details. This is her reconciling in her mind and going, okay, well, I didn't think that this guy that was dressed in all black was a threat. We always got people coming in and out of the house. And we've talked about this many times here on this channel. And it's not like Bryan came at her aggressively or anything. He just simply walked past her. But the part I kept seeing reports about is how Bryan supposedly said Kaylee's name during the incident. Well, that's not really the case, because further down in these documents, the lead crime scene investigator is giving his summary of what he was told happened, and he mentions that Dylan heard a male say, "It's okay, Kaylee, I'm here for you." So in my opinion, this comes off more as a game of telephone. This isn't a direct statement from Dylan. And I think that that's important when you're reading some of these statements too, that these officers are just writing down the highlights of what a person is saying. So if everything doesn't quite make sense, sometimes it's on the person that's taking the notes' fault too, you know? Okay, so now let's talk about the WSU complaints against Bryan, and buckle up because there is a lot. Now again, these reports are redacted, so I have to do a bit of assuming, but it looks like this first one was with someone who said that Bryan was their student and that they had met several times to discuss requirements for his doctorate studies. So it seems like this is someone that was over him, possibly a professor or an administrator. They described Bryan as socially awkward, and they said that Bryan was removed from a redacted area because of his rudeness and unprofessional behavior towards other students and college professors. Now, I would have to assume that this is saying that he was removed from his TA position. The next interview is also with someone employed at WSU, and her job required that she discuss course options with students and any issues that they may have with other students or faculty members. She said that she regularly interacted with Bryan and that her interactions were they were pretty ordinary, nothing like out of the blue. She said that she would strike up conversations about hiking in the local area, but as the weeks went on, she said that Bryan would hang out in the hallways, and she said that he would hang around her office, and she described him as creepy. She said that he would simply just stand at her desk and stare at her, or just stare at her coworker, and at one point, he even blocked the coworker in her desk area. She said that Bryan would also follow them out to their cars at the end of the day. And you might think, okay, maybe he's just socially awkward. Maybe he's just wanting a friend, and he's latching on, and he's not realizing what he's doing. But the behavior resulting in them arranging for someone to meet them when they got off of work to escort them to their cars. This wasn't just some socially awkward guy who, maybe the girls were friendly to him and he latched on to it. They went and got somebody to walk them to their vehicles because they were concerned. She then went on to say that these complaints that she got about Bryan referenced his rude and belittling behavior towards women and his unprofessional rude dealings with, and they redacted a name. She said that this resulted in a mandatory training class for all graduate students regarding behavior expectations. So imagine this. The way that he was treating people, especially women, and this is going to be a reoccurring theme here with Bryan, was so bad that they had to do this whole class for all of these students. That is wild. She said that she received 9 total complaints against Bryan. Just her received 9. And then in a different report, a woman who was also a graduate student talked about her experience with Bryan. And she said that in their conversation, Bryan talked about how interested he was in how emotion played a role in how offenders make decisions. She said that they talked about the use of alcohol and substances, and she said that Bryan said that he was not a drinker and he did not understand why people drank. I wonder if he told her about his alleged addiction. But then she said that Bryan liked to dominate their conversations. She said that he would stand in doorways and hover over her, and that he had this like macho demeanor about him, and he would appear to be like all puffed up. She said the only thing that felt off to her about Bryan was his intense stare. She said that he would intensely stare at people even when he wasn't having a conversation with them. She also said that she was aware of an issue that Bryan had with, and there's a name that's redacted, and I'm thinking that this was maybe another student. And she said that Bryan was perceived by female classmates as dominant and disrespectful to female instructors. At one point, this person had come into this woman's office crying because of a classroom discussion that Bryan was having with her. She said that his behavior could be described as possibly like sexist, and that he really did not like to be interrupted. She said that Bryan seemed very uptight and serious, and that he wanted to come off as intelligent. She also remembers one other staff member pulling her aside to tell her about a possible issue with Bryan stalking another member of the staff. Yeah, not just a student, y'all. The staff. An incident took place where he asked the other staff member and had followed that person outside to their car. This person, given all this information to investigators, then went on to say that in hindsight, she believed that the happened possibly because Bryan had been rejected by someone. So see, these interviews were given way back in 2023. So it's like the incel stuff. I'm still, unless there was some sort of thing that I am convinced that this is somebody that had psychopathic tendencies and controlled them in whatever way for however long, and then got into the criminology and began to obsess over stuff, hyper focus, if you will, and started to get an inflated sense of self, all those pictures of himself, along with him over talking people, feeling like he's the smartest one in the room, along with him getting pulled over by the police and wanting to let the police that he basically knew more about the law than they did, and all of this stuff, and then began to convince himself he could commit the perfect crime and be better than all the ones that got caught. Anyways, this next one is also very interesting because this woman actually contacted the Moscow tip line to report that she had observed Bryan with bloody knuckles just prior to the incident in Moscow. She too was a graduate student, and she said that she did not like Bryan because he would constantly talk during one of their classes. She said that he would actually pick fights with other classmates, and she even described an argument where someone left their class upset because of Bryan. She then went on to talk about how one time after class, her and Bryan were completely alone. And she said that she was trying to leave the classroom, but Bryan blocked the exit. She said that Bryan then said that they should meet up sometime and talk about their professional career. Imagine that, y'all. Imagine this guy being a rude butthead to everybody at all times, thinking he's all that in the classroom, over-talking other people, disrespecting the female professors, and then it's just them two in the classroom, and he's sitting in there, and she gets all her stuff and gets ready to leave, and he blocks the door, leans up against it, and says, "Hey, we ought to hang out. We ought to talk about our professional careers." Like, hello, I don't think so. Yeah, maybe sometime Bryan, like squeeze, gosh, poor girl. Anyways, she also went on to say that Bryan's appearance changed after the incident in Moscow. And I think this is very interesting because she said that he would normally come in and be all clean shaven and neatly dressed. But after the incident, he would come to class with like facial hair, and his dress would be all disheveled. And she said that he also started wearing a thick blue coat that he never took off during their 3-hour-long class, even when the weather didn't call for a thick coat like that. She then said that Bryan always engaged in classroom discussions, but when the Moscow incident came up, she said that Bryan did not participate. Her and other classmates were even tracking how often Bryan would arrive late to class with female professors versus male professors. They say that he was always late to class with female professors, but not the male professors. They literally kept a tally of it. Like they This is not seemingly a situation where a guy that's in a position of some sort of power at the school gets into an argument with a female and everybody's saying, oh, he's sexist, he's sexist. These people are actually tallying and like watching this. This is a man who thought that he could dominate everybody, but especially women. And probably from the rejection that he got from the types of women that he wanted, the incel factor. In a different interview, another classmate said that she actually asked Bryan about his bloody knuckles in October, and she said that he had been boxing and that's why his hand was injured. I just see him like trying to talk to somebody, a girl, and then him being in his apartment late at nighttime and listening to music, like punching things, like, I don't know. I just don't see him like at a boxing class. I think we would have heard from this boxing class person by now, but maybe not. Nevertheless, this woman also said that Bryan seemed to be in support of the DP at the time and even made statements that the victims' families should have a say as to whether or not the DP is given, which is very interesting. But when I tell you guys that I could go on and on, there are probably at least 100 pages of complaints against Bryan in this document drop. And it's a lot of the same stuff, like him arguing with other students and professors and essentially everyone around him, especially the females. And one person even talked about overhearing Bryan shouting at a male professor, and they said how unusual it was because Bryan typically only argued with female professors. This person said that the argument led to the professor asking Bryan to leave, but that Bryan wouldn't. He actually refused to leave. So the professor had to leave his own office to get away from Bryan. Can you imagine? There's even one complaint that says that a grad student came running into his professor's office upset because she said that Bryan would not work with her because she was disabled and gay. Yeah, she said that Bryan told her that he would need his partner to be physically perfect and a disability would just not be acceptable. The last one that I wanted to talk about is something that a professor predicted about Bryan. And I want to say how eerie this is, but when you think about all this other stuff that was going on, I have a couple things to say. One, why did it take the college so long to get rid of him? Man, the red tape and these types of things, and you got to go through all these protocols. When you have somebody that's causing this much of a problem, okay, hello. But it's not surprising when you hear all of that. But nevertheless, when discussing Bryan with her coworkers, she said that she remembered saying, he is smart enough that in 4 years, we will have to give him a PhD. But mark my words, I work with predators. If we give him a PhD, that's the guy that when he's a professor, we will hear of his harassing, stalking, and essaying of his students. Whoa. This is what the teachers are talking about in the break room, basically, you guys. Whoa. The same professor said that Bryan was so problematic as a TA that they considered cutting his funding to get him out of the program. And this had never happened before at WSU. And this conversation about Bryan happened during Christmas break. So clearly it seems like things were coming to a head for Bryan during that fall of 2022. And the complaints against him were mounding up. And he had several disciplinary meetings with the faculty. Then he commits the incident in Moscow and things got worse from there. He stopped going to class as much, but when he did go, he looked all disheveled and he wasn't participating at all in the discussions about the Moscow case. And then he's at home meticulously cleaning his car, Googling the case and himself constantly, and even Googling how to get rid of his car and so on and so on. These complaints started coming in just days into Bryan's first semester of the program that he was in. And by the end of that semester, there was 13 total. That is in just 3 months, a semester, not a year, not a 4-year degree, in 3 months. And I have to say, you guys, we all interact with somebody that's rude, right? Sometimes on a daily basis. Maybe somebody's having a bad day, whatever. For people to actually go and file complaints, maybe you have one person that's super sensitive and will just rush down there and file a complaint any old time. But this many different people, staff members, professors, administration, students, all literally filing complaints about this guy, which means whatever he did, it had to be done multiple times. Nobody's going to file a complaint the first time you have an argument with somebody, okay? It had to be bad. And the whole school's sitting around going like, we cut his funding? Like, how are we going to get, how do we get him out of here? What do we do? Wow. So my question to you all is, do you think that this was just like the beginning of a spree for Bryan? Some of y'all I've seen in the comment section think that this was not his first situation. What if he hadn't been caught though? What do you think? Do you think he would have went for more? I definitely do. I think that when they got Bryan off the streets, they saved lives. For sure. Because he, again, thought he was smarter than anybody, and he was going to go back at it again. Let me know what y'all think in the comment section down below. Other than that, I love y'all so much. I hope y'all have a wonderful weekend, and I'll see y'all in the next video. Love you guys. Bye. And don't forget to click the link in the description box or scan this QR code to start playing Midas Merge today.